group of Canadians led the way for others in the First World War while battling racism and discrimination. Douglas Ruck joins us this morning with more on the Black Battalion. Thank you for joining us.
Good morning, Annette. Thank you for inviting me.
Your father, Calvin, is largely credited for bringing the Black Battalion's story up front. How did he, what was his connection to the Black Battalion?
That's a very interesting part of the story. My father, despite being very much of an amateur historian, had not heard anything about the battalion. But as a young man working for CN Rail as a porter, he noticed that some of the older gentlemen, who were also porters, had a lapel pin, and he asked them about it. And they told him that they were members of the No. 2 Construction Battalion that had served during the First World War. And that was his introduction to the battalion.
And this was 600 members of this battalion, most of them from Nova Scotia, and they were not allowed to carry rifles. Tell me what their role in the First World War was.
Well, let me take it back just a little bit. When war broke out, Wilfrid Laurier, who was leader of that position at that time, expressed the view that Canada would support Britain as one heart and one mind. But it soon became apparent that not just one heart and one mind, but also one color. And that color was white, not black. So when those young men also went to the recruitment offices to become part of the war effort, they were told, you cannot, because this is a white man's war. You're not wanted. We do not need your assistance. So they were rejected. And between 1914 and 1916, they fought to fight. They fought to be allowed to be patriots. They fought to be allowed to go overseas to defend their country, to support democracy. And when they were finally allowed in 1916, it was not carrying rifles, it was not armed, but as a non-combatant unit. Therefore, they were given picks and shovels, and their jobs were to dig trenches. In fact, they were connected to a forestry corps. And they spent most of the war, in fact, not all the war, in the lumber yards, preparing lumber for railways, for trenches, taking care of horses. That was a major part of the war at that time. But they were viewed as being a secondary aspect. They were viewed as doing menial tasks, which is not that dissimilar, in fact, to what they dealt with in their own, at home here in Canada. It was part of that not being strong enough, not being fit enough to carry rifles, to be part of the war effort. So that's where they were subjugated to the secondary role for the most part, although very important as it was.
Very, very important because, and you think about the danger that they place themselves in because they're going in and they're literally paving the way.
Well, that's very true. I mean, it was extraordinary sacrifice. For the most part, they weren't wanted, as you pointed out in the introduction. They weren't wanted whatsoever. It was stated by the head of the Canadian Force at that time, Major General Willoughby Watkins, that these men, that Negroes, in fact, were vain and imitative and will make poor soldiers. These young men were not fit to be in the Canadian military. They were not smart enough, they were not strong enough, and that the white troops would not want to work with them. So they were rejected upon that basis and given what they viewed as being menial tasks, which was the lumber, the other work, secondary work, but they were not there as a combat unit.
Right, but really the work that they did was so much more important. And, soldiers couldn't fight without the work that they did.
Well, that's true. Without them, the Canadian war effort would have floundered. They would not have had a chance to succeed. Their sacrifice was extraordinary, but was never really recognized for what it was.
It's shameful.
The very fact, it's exactly shameful. The fact they were put in a non-combatant unit was viewed as being a compromise because it was felt the white troops would be uncomfortable working around them. In fact, it had been proposed that when they went overseas, they would sail alone on a troop ship without any other white troops, and in fact, they would not have a naval escort because that's how they were viewed as being not worth that kind of effort.
What changed?
Well, during that period of time, very little changed, in fact. They came back home, really were unrecognized what they had done, what they had accomplished, and very few people heard of them. They were barely a footnote in the history books. What has changed, in fact, in some ways, goes back to the works of my father, the effort of his book, and what others were doing in small pockets around this country to keep this memory alive. And over time, we've seen it slowly gain some traction to the point now where as the African population is seeking, in fact, the African Canadian population is seeking an apology from the government. to finally come out and respect what these men did and a full acknowledgement apology for how they were treated. Not just the men, their families, and I would say to you, all African Canadian citizens were viewed and treated in this manner. And the time has come for the apology, which we're hoping to receive here in July of this year, July 2022.
And it didn't come, or well, the next July it's coming.
That's right. That's correct. Yes. Yes. So far, we've had an intent to apologize delivered by the Minister of National Defense, and we're looking for the formal apology to take place in July of next year.
Okay, we are looking forward to that. Douglas Ruck, thank you for sharing your story, your father's story as well. Very important history lesson today.
My pleasure, and thank you very much once again.